Gorilla Walk, yes. Okay, so we are about 15 pages into this book. So that means that we have about 30 more pages to go. So, um, sit back, relax, get ready to interact with Gorilla Walk by Ted and Betsy Lewin. Okay. I think we already read this. Yeah, we read this page because this is probably, oh yeah, it's Ted. He's taking out his porter. And then we have this picture of Ted and I'm assuming the porters and the travel guides. We come to a mucky, ankle-deep swamp. Twisted roots grab at our feet as we cross it. Then up another steep slope, one step, one gasp for air at a time. We hear the slice and slash of the trackers' machetes ahead. They've hacked a tunnel just big enough to crawl through. Thorns and nettles tear at us. Ahead, a giant fallen fig tree makes 100-foot-long, rotting, moss-covered bridge up the forest slope. One false step and it's straight down through the thorns and rocks into the ravine hundreds of feet below. A porter offers a steadying hand. Don't fall, he warns. Atop the slope, the forest canopy opens up and we can see the sky again for a little bit as we head down the other side. We've been out of the water for nearly 3 hours now. We can't swallow and our mouths are full of cotton. Feel full of cotton. Suddenly, our guide yells, "Safari ants, run!" Hundreds of thousands of ants march in a narrow column, flanked by half-inch-long soldier ants whose huge mandibles curve backward at the tips like fish hooks. Their bite is like the sting of a wasp, we're told. "Hurry, hurry, run!" yells our guide. The ants seem to be the only thing he's afraid of. We run as fast as we can, crunching hundreds underfoot. When we're well past the colony, we stop and check our clothes for any hitchhikers. We descend into a clearing fringed by tall trees and thick with brilliantasia, the dense broadleaf bushes that are one of the gorilla's favorite foods. We've been tracking now for 7 hours. We're soaked with sweat, smeared with blood, stained with moss, scratched and bleeding, unable to swallow in our thirst, out of breath, and without hope of ever seeing a mountain gorilla. Okay, let's stop and think. What kind of figurative language is that? Soaked with sweat, smeared with mud, stained with moss, scratched and bleeding. What kind of figurative language would that be? If you said alliteration, you would be correct. The trackers, still fresh and clean, look at us and smile, then point with their machetes to a movement in the middle of the bushes. There, one whispers, the gorillas are just there. They hack their way through the thicket to within 15 feet of the silverback. Now we can smell his pungent, horsey scent and see the big black knob of his head. Slowly pulling back the tangled vegetation like a curtain, the trackers make sounds to reassure the silverback. And then there he is, this gentle 450-pound giant who moves through this thicket with such ease. Our thirst and our fatigue are forgotten. So that's interesting that they were complaining about, well, they weren't really complaining, but they're noticing all these horrible things up there. And now everything is forgotten. Why is everything forgotten? Our trackers helped habituate this group and know them well. This one they have named Kakupari, which means lame one. Not lame as in loser, but lame as in something doesn't work correctly. His left hand is crippled from a fight with 2 other big males who ganged up on him in an attempt to take over his group. He was able to fight them off, but because he's handicapped now, the next time they may drive him away or even kill him. If they succeed, one of them will assume leadership, kill the baby, and start his own family. There can be only one leader, so the other male gorilla may stay with the group as a subdominant male, or leave to attract females and start his own group. Our silverback is very delicately plucking the Brilliantasia, peeling back the stems into curling tendrils and stuffing them into and the leaves into his mouth. Our trackers make sounds. Cacapria looks over his shoulder at us, passes gas, and continues to eat, then stops and seems to go into a reverie. Cacapria rolls over onto his prodigious belly. I wonder what prodigious means. Maybe if I'm using context clues, I could figure out prodigious might mean big, because we're talking about a gorilla. I don't know. He rolls over onto his prodigious belly, rests his chin on the back of his folded hands, and stares directly at us from only 10 feet away. He doesn't seem to really notice us, though. It's more as if he's staring right through us. There is movement in the vegetation a few yards away. It's Kasigazi. Call him Kasigazi. Boy, which means boy. The young male of the K group. Somewhere hidden nearby is Nyabuntono, small lady, and her 2-week-old baby, Magoba, the prophet. Before we know it, our hour is up. The trackers continue to talk to their old friend as we back away. Apparently that's what a gorilla looks like when they're yawning, and that's kind of terrifying. Whoop. We try to walk on the twisted root structure of the Brilliantasia, but fall through up to our thighs. Thorns prick our legs, even through our pants. Hacking our way to the edge of the forest, we start back up the slope for home. We have to be out of the forest by 6 o'clock, and it is already 5:15. The sun will set soon. After only an hour of hard climbing, we step out into a farmer's field. Had we known this morning where gorillas would be found, we could have entered the forest here and saved ourselves 6 hours of rugged trekking. And cold cattle stand amid the banana trees and stare at us, their huge horns curving gracefully over their heads like misplaced elephant tusks. A long ridge, flanked by terraced slopes, descend into a valley. It's nearly dark now, 6:30, and white plumes of smoke from cooking fires dot the landscape. There's a picture of the Brilliantasia. Here's a picture of what a banana tree looks like, and then these would be the Ankole cattle with their big old tusks. The road is still miles away as we start down the steep slant, bone-weary, in darkness so total we can't see the porters in front of us, and each footstep is an act of faith. What does that mean? We can't see the porters in front of us, and each footstep is an act of faith. I wonder what that means. As the slope becomes more gentle, shadowy figures pass us on their way home from the fields, and the smell of wood smoke fills the air. An hour down, bottles of water are suddenly thrust at us in the darkness. A ranger has come up from the road to meet us. We had almost forgotten our thirst, but we drain the bottles quickly. Still wet with sweat, we feel the chill of the night air. Ahead now, we see pinpricks of light, the headlights of our truck. We walk into their glare and sink into our seats, exhausted. We've been tracking for almost 11 hours. We're worn out. We're shivering with cold. We've never been happier. Here's a picture of a bird, and then the cattle again. And that is them tracking down. I like how Ted and Betsy have this kind of juxtaposition or like difference in this sentence. So they They talk about how hard it's been. We've been tracking for almost 11 hours. We're worn out. We're so cold that we're shivering, but they've never been happier. Why are they so happy? Why would they say that they've never been happier even though they went through such hard stuff? Do you know? We will read a few more pages and then we will be done. M group. At 8:30 in the morning, the next morning, we are walking down the rough road that bisects. Interesting, bisects. Would that relate to our Greek and Latin roots? Our word work? S-E-C-T. I wonder what bisects means. If bi would mean two, like bicycle, and sect means to cut, I wonder what bisect would mean. Anyways, we are walking down the rough road that bisects the park. Before long, we step onto a path cut into the thick vegetation at the side of the road and begin our climb. It's hard going, but after yesterday's long trek, we're ready for it. Today, we're going to visit M Group, a group of 16 family members. Do you guys remember what the first group was called that they saw? The first group was K Group, and there were 4 family members. And this page right here went through the family members. Kakapria, Kasigazi, Naya Buntono, and Magoba. Okay, so that is K Group with the 4 family members. Now they're going on to M Group that has 16 family members. If they were so happy that they saw 4, I can't imagine how happy they'll be when they see 16. After only 3 hours of chopping and slicing our way up the slope, we found M Group's night nests. About a dozen flat, trampoline-like structures bouncy underfoot. Forest foragers, mountain gorillas do not make permanent homes. Let's think about that sentence. Forest foragers, mountain gorillas do not make permanent homes. What is it trying to tell us? I think it's trying to tell us that the mountain gorillas are forest foragers. That means that they will go around the forest, different parts, and use the resources that are there, so they won't make a permanent home like maybe the other gorillas did. So they travel around the forest and they just make these little nests for the places that they live at the moment. Each gorilla makes its own nest every night, wherever the group happens to be at nightfall. Infants sleep with their mother. So here's a picture of the gorillas in their night nest. Here's a little picture of a baby gorilla. And then this is a picture of a giant land snail as big as someone's hand. Creepy. We sit on the nest and look out at what the gorillas saw last night just before they dozed off. In front of us are 3 huge trees arching at the top and hung with moss-covered vines. Through the graceful arch of the trees, the impenetrable forest rolls off, seemingly without end. We feel out of our own time. This view, it seems to us, is of the world first made. 100 yards up the slope, we find M Group. Leaving our porters, we move quickly behind the trackers, come to a sunlit patch of brilliantasia, and stop, ankle deep in a stream. The trackers wait, listen, then point directly ahead. Through the leafy cover, we see part of the huge back and shoulders of the silverback. He is eating. Then he turns to look at us, and all we can see are his eyes, hooded by his beetle brow. Says the trackers. We can hear the others feeding around us, breaking stems and branches. So there would be the tracker pointing ahead directly, and then Ted and Betsy Lewin taking their pictures of the gorilla, the silverback. Here is a picture of either a porter or a tracker. And that is where we will stop for today.